Good morning, and continuation to what we have seen in the last recording. The next topic that we would like to discuss is consequences of industrial disputes. So, consequences means results. What are the end results that we get because of these industrial disputes? These consequences are again divided into some subtypes, and the first type that we are going to discuss is industrial factors. So the industrial factors which causes industrial disputes are, first one is nature of the employment, which means the employment methods and the employment policies that are followed by the organizations may sometimes cause dispute. Like there are temporary jobs and there are permanent jobs. Like your payment, your wages or your salaries. All these are the employment related aspects. And the second one is work and its nature. The type of work that you do, the working conditions that you have, the type of machinery that is available to you, number of working hours that you are asked to work, all these cause industrial disputes. These are the industrial factors. Coming to the management attitude towards the employees, which means the way of interaction of management with the employees, the way in which the management is looking after its employees. Is it being fair to them, or is it being unfair to them, or is it treating them well or not, or what are the labor policies that the management is adopting? Are these labor policies uniform to all, or is there any discrimination? Is the leadership and supervision good enough? Is it effective, or is it not effective? All these things comes under management's attitude towards the employees. Next is government and machinery. Government actually plays a balancing role between the management and the workers. But under certain circumstances, there might be chances that government related factors may also cause industrial disputes. Like I said, under certain circumstances, there might be chances. These might occur or might not occur, but we can also treat it as one of the consequences. Then, like we discussed in the last recording, political interference, which means that politicians or the political parties interfering with the trade union activity and trying to influence the trade union activity. Political instability that is there, and where there are no good relationship between the central and the state relating to the industries or relating to the employees, or where there are multiple labor laws where there are too many labor laws. When there are too many labor laws, anyone can use that law on behalf of them. So too many laws also creates confusion, and too many laws also leads to misuse. So these also may be considered as political interference consequences. And the next one is economic causes. These are the very main causes. Majority of the industrial disputes or majority of any type of strikes or any type of activities that are going to affect the work in the industry, they happen because of this reason of economic causes, which means low wages, problems regarding DA and bonus. Though profits have been increasing for the industry, the salaries or this financial benefits that you are passing on to the workers, if they remain constant or if they remain fixed in spite of earning huge profits, then that might be also one of the reasons. So, you know what is industrial dispute? You know what are the reasons of industrial dispute? You know what are the consequences of industrial dispute? You know what are the types of industrial dispute? Now, you should also know what is the machinery that is available, or what is the solution that is available to settle or to prevent these industrial disputes. So when we are talking about that machinery for prevention and settlement of industrial disputes, the major one that we would be talking about is Industrial Dispute Act 1947. The name itself says this is the act that is passed by the government to prevent or to settle industrial disputes. So, what are the objectives and scope of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947? To make sure that there is good relationship between the employer and the employee. That is the first objective. Any investigation and any settlement of the industrial dispute between the employers and the employees, or between the employer and the employer, or between the employee and the employee, can be settled by having a good representation of a registered trade union. Prevention of illegal strikes and lockouts. If the management has resorted to any layoff, any retrenchments and closure of the companies, then this act will come into force and try to provide relief to the working community. And collective bargaining may also be considered as one of the objectives of this Act. To achieve industrial peace, harmony, good relations, and economic justice. So if you need to achieve all these things, then workers' committees needs to be formed, and these committees will discuss the issues of the common interest so that cooperation, accommodation, mutual trust can be maintained. But unfortunately, this machinery was not functioning. It is not practically reliable because there will be no common interest between the worker and the management. Worker and the management both will be having diversified interests. Both will be having varied interests. So it is very difficult to come to a common stand of common interest. So industrial needs like working together, working as a unit, working with mutual trust, and working with the tolerance, this needs to be fulfilled. There should be good cooperation between employer and employee, and the workers should have every right to protect the democratic right of strike and lockout. Workers will have every right to strike when they have a problem, and the management also has every right to go for lockout when they have a valid problem. So this point is very important. In case of any industrial dispute that is arising, there are three types of machinery that is available under Industrial Dispute Act to settle that industrial dispute. And that three types of machinery are conciliation, adjudication, and voluntary arbitration. We are going to see what each of these are going to mean in the coming slides. ID Act objective is also to protect the trade union's right to make sure that employees are not getting laid off and employees are not getting retrenched, to make sure that production and productivity should be regulated, which means it should be optimum. In case if it is less, steps should be taken to enhance it, and in case if it is more than the prescribed limit, then the same steps should be taken to make sure that workers are not overburdened with this production and productivity. To provide social justice, justice to the workers and justice to the management in case of any industrial dispute is also one of the objective and scope of Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So the main features of the Industrial Dispute Act are: if an industrial dispute has gone to conciliation or adjudication, then strikes and lockouts should not happen. When an industrial dispute is pending before conciliation or adjudication, strikes and lockouts should not happen. Any industrial dispute can be referred to the industrial tribunal by an agreement of parties to dispute or by the state government. In case if there is a problem between the two parties, that is employee and employer, and if this dispute has to go to industrial tribunal, both these parties, employee and management, should agree for it, or state government can forward this dispute to the tribunal. Whatever is the judgment that is given by the government, or whatever is the judgment that is given by the tribunal, you are bound to follow it, you are bound to accept it, at least for a specific period which is not exceeding 1 year. However, if the government thinks that it is appropriate, if the government thinks that it is necessary, the government has the power to declare the transport, coal, iron and steel as public utility services, which means you cannot disturb the production of those services. And this can be done for a maximum period of 6 months only. In case if the employee is retrenched, or in case if the employee is laid off, the employer should pay the compensation. Not only for the workman, number of authorities such as Works Committee, Conciliation Officer, Board of Conciliation, Labor Court, Tribunal, all these are the machinery that was provided under Industrial Dispute Act for the settlement or for the prevention of industrial disputes. So coming to the very important aspect of the functions of the Industrial Dispute Act. The function is to bring cooperation and good relation among the employer and the employee. And this should happen by the representatives of employer and employee in a democratic manner. Like I said, for the settlement of industrial dispute, there are 3 types of machinery: conciliation, adjudication, and voluntary arbitration. During the post-independence era, after the independence, we have got something as jurisprudence, which is called as industrial law. There is some law. Industrial law plays a very important role in the national economy of a country. So now we are going to see in detail what do you mean by conciliation, what do you mean by adjudication, and what do you mean by voluntary arbitration. Conciliation is nothing but reconciling the differences between the persons. Whatever the differences that are there between the two parties, those differences should be reconciled and they should be settled. What will happen under conciliation is both the parties of the dispute are brought together before a third party and they will be persuaded to take a mutual, common, binding decision. That's why you will also call this conciliation as mediation. And this third party that we are speaking in conciliation may be a single individual or may be a group of people. So, this conciliation is having the following features. What does the conciliator or mediator do? He will try to remove the differences and he will make or he will influence the parties to think with a problem solving approach, and he will persuade them to reach a solution, and the mediator or the conciliator may always have the option to change his approach from case to case. So, according to the ID Act, Industrial Dispute Act 1947, under conciliation machinery, you will have these two aspects called conciliation officer and board of conciliation. Who is conciliation officer? Industrial Dispute Act 1947 Section 4 gives permission for the government to appoint a person called as conciliation officer. If the organization is employing 20 or more persons, normally the commissioner, additional commissioner or deputy commissioner of the industries will be appointed as conciliation officer. In case of central government undertakings, officers from Central Labour Commission are appointed. This conciliation officer will enjoy the same powers of a civil court. He should give the judgment within 14 days of the commencement of the conciliation proceedings. And whatever the judgment the conciliation officer is giving, that judgment is binding by both the parties. This board of conciliation, if the conciliation officer fails to come to a common decision, and if the conciliation officer fails to resolve the industrial dispute, then Section 5 of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947 will give powers to the government to appoint a board of conciliation. This board of conciliation is not a permanent board. It is a temporary board which consists of a chairman and 2 or 4 other members which are nominated in equal numbers by the parties to the dispute. So the chairman will be there, who is appointed by the government, and if there are 2 members, 1 member each from both the parties, and if there are 4 members, 2 members each from both the parties will be a part of the conciliation board. Like I said earlier, this board enjoys the powers of a civil court. This board will admit the disputes only referred by the government. This board will follow all other rules and regulations just like the conciliation officer. But this board can give judgment within 2 months, whereas conciliation officer should give it in 14 days. If you take India into consideration, this board of conciliation is very rare, and normally what we use very commonly in India is conciliation officer only, through which we can settle our disputes. So what are the principles of conciliation or principles of conciliator or the conciliation board? Independence and impartiality. The conciliator should act independently and the conciliator should act impartially with both the parties. There should not be any partiality. He should be fair and he should make sure that the correct justice has been arrived. Whatever are the matters relating to the conciliation, it is the duty of the conciliator to keep all these matters as confidential. When a conciliator receives any information from one of the parties regarding this industrial dispute, he should immediately pass that information to the other party also, to make sure that both the parties know exactly all the information that is relating to this industrial dispute. The parties also should cooperate with the conciliator. Whatever the conciliator requests them to do, they should readily do that. Actually, this conciliator is not he does not comes under civil procedure, but he should not ignore the principle of natural justice. Though he does not belong to any other law, or though he is not answerable to any other law, he should not behave in a very partial manner. He should behave in a very impartial manner, and he should always keep in mind that it is his duty to give the natural justice. Where should this conciliation be done? Where, in which place? The place of conciliation can be decided by both the parties amicably. In case if they don't arrive at a decision, then the conciliator can decide the place after discussing with both the parties. The conciliator has always the right to meet any of those parties and communicate with any of the parties in orally and in writing. He may do that for both the parties together, or he has also the right to do for each party separately. How to conduct the conciliation? In conducting the conciliation, the conciliator has always the freedom how to conduct, but whatever way he is conducting, that should be appropriate. He should take into account the background of the case, the wishes of the parties, and he should also identify and keep in mind the need of speedy settlement of dispute. The parties and the conciliator has always the right to seek administrative assistance by any suitable institution or any independent person, but with the consent of the parties. That is relating to conciliation. Then we are going to see arbitration and adjudication. We will see those arbitration and adjudication in the coming class. Thank you.